The world moves with a deceptive rhythm, a synchronized dance of commerce and diplomacy that masks the tremors beneath the surface. From neon-lit skyscrapers to digital pulses of global markets, there is a shared illusion of permanence. People believe the world as they know it, a fragile network of treaties, will hold together forever. But this stability is a thin veneer, a brittle layer of glass stretched over a bubbling cauldron of ancient grievances. We live in an era where peace is not a solid foundation, but a temporary ceasefire, a pause between echoes of history and thunder of what is yet to come. Deep beneath modern geopolitics lies a resonance dating back thousands of years. In quiet dust of ancient libraries, the words of the prophet Zechariah remain etched in stone, waiting for fulfillment. The prophecy speaks of a time when Jerusalem, sitting upon the Judean hills, becomes more than a capital. It describes the city as a cup that sends surrounding peoples reeling, a heavy stone that injures any who attempt to move it. This is not merely a struggle over territory. It is a spiritual magnetic field pulling the gaze of every nation toward a single point on the map. The ancient scroll warns that the eyes of the world will eventually fixate on this spot, and reason will begin to dissolve into a frantic, collective intoxication as the global focus narrows. The tides are visibly shifting. The old guard of international relations is crumbling, and traditional alliances are fraying like old rope under social and economic pressure. Nations that once stood side by side now look at one another with suspicion, their bonds dissolved by cold pragmatism. In halls of power, whispers of betrayal replace declarations of unity. The shift is subtle, a missed vote, a slow-walked trade agreement, a cooling of rhetoric. But the movement accelerates. The world's family, once a loud and boisterous collective, begins to turn its back on its smallest member, leaving a void of silence where there used to be a chorus of support. Behind this tide lies a force described in Ezekiel as a hook in the jaw. It is a haunting image of a power being dragged toward a destiny it did not consciously choose. Global powers believe they act out of rational self-interest, seeking resources or securing borders. But there is a deeper, invisible pull. Whether it is the hunger for wealth, strategic control of the Mediterranean, or the ideological drive to settle an age-old score, the nations are being funneled into a singular path. They are being drawn by their own desires, unaware that the hook has already set, and the line is being pulled by a hand far greater than any earthly ruler, guiding them towards sacred geography. For Israel, the air grows heavy with isolation. There is a profound psychological toll when a nation realizes it is standing entirely alone. The world's family has closed its doors. The phones go silent. Expected reinforcements never arrive. It is a sense of total solitude, a feeling of being the only one left on a darkening stage while the audience watches from the shadows. This isolation is not just political. It is an emotional desert where warmth is replaced by the biting wind of universal condemnation. Then the movement begins. It is not a slow escalation, but a sudden, coordinated mobilization. From the north, the east, and the south, the engines of war begin to roar. Satellites capture images of iron and steel flowing toward the center of the world, like blood to a wound. The siege has officially begun. The borders are being tested, the skies are filling with shadows, and the realization begins to dawn that ancient prophecies are no longer ink on a page. They are the reality of the morning news. The players are in position, and the midnight hour is now drawing near. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments where you are watching from. The dust of the ages rises beneath the weight of modern tracks. The Valley of Decision, once a quiet memory of ancient kings, now vibrates with the hum of high-altitude drones and the low growl of armored columns. Here the collision of epochs is visceral. Steel-plated monsters from the north and south roll over the same limestone paths where shepherds once tended their flocks. The sky is no longer a canvas for stars, but a grid of electronic warfare, filled with invisible signals and the glint of satellite-guided missiles. The unified global armies bring the peak of human ingenuity to a place that feels as old as time, creating a landscape where the digital edge meets the unyielding reality of the sacred geography. Within the pressurized war rooms of distant capitals, the final ink dries on the most significant documents of the age. This is the Great Betrayal, a moment where the last vestiges of loyalty are discarded for perceived global stability. Global leaders, once public champions of friendship, now lean over mahogany tables to sign treaties that formalize the isolation of their former partner. These documents are more than signatures, they are acts of political treason. The signatures are quick, almost clinical, but their weight is felt across the Mediterranean. Israel watches from its lonely vigil as those who once promised eternal support now provide the logistical backbone for the siege. Above this gathering storm, the heavens themselves begin to testify. The atmosphere grows heavy and thick, defying meteorological explanation. As predicted in the ancient scrolls of Joel, the sun seems to retreat behind a veil of mourning, and the moon begins to bleed. This celestial phenomenon is not a mere eclipse. It is a deep copper-red hue that bathes the Valley of Decision in an eerie, unsettling light. This blood moon hangs over the landscape like a warning light. The air turns cold and metallic, and the natural rhythm of day and night feels fractured. To the scientists, it is an anomaly, but to those watching with faith, it is the signature of a cosmic shift. In the streets of Jerusalem and the surrounding villages, the human toll begins to manifest as a suffocating blanket of despair. Civilians who once went about their daily lives now find themselves caught in a tightening noose of iron. The sound of air raid sirens has become the background noise of existence. The elderly carry a deep, weary recognition of past struggles that pale in comparison to this gathering. Diplomacy has failed, and with it, the hope of a peaceful resolution has vanished. Families huddle in shelters, listening to the thunder of approaching forces, realizing the world has effectively chosen their disappearance. As the unified global armies draw closer to the sacred geography, a strange, supernatural tension begins to ripple through the ranks. It is a psychological contagion that defies military training. Soldiers report seeing shadows that shouldn't exist. A prophetic blindness strikes commanders at critical moments, causing them to second-guess their coordinates or misinterpret intelligence. This is not a failure of equipment, but a strike against the human spirit. Panic flares up in camps like a wildfire, fueled by an irrational fear that emanates from the very earth they tread. The closer they get to the heart of the land, the more the air vibrates with a frequency that triggers ancient alarms. In the command centers, the global leaders face a terrifying revelation. They began this mobilization believing they were the architects of a new world order, the masters of their own destiny. They thought they were the ones holding the hook, but as the pieces move into position, a chilling realization settles over them. The strategic opportunities that drew them here now look like bait. They see the patterns on their screens and realize they are not in control. They are being drawn into a trap set by an unseen higher power, a design far more complex than any human conspiracy. They are challenging the very architecture of reality itself. The midnight hour arrives with a silence that feels heavier than the thunder of war. In the secret bunkers of Jerusalem and the desolate trenches, the sense of inevitable collapse is palpable. Israel stands at the edge of the abyss, its resources spent and its soldiers weary beyond measure. The unified global armies, sensing the finality of their campaign, tighten their grip around the sacred geography. For the civilians in the darkness, the world is a cold place where mercy is forgotten. Human calculation suggests that the end is certain. The flickering lights of the city are a manifestation of a nation's ebbing life force. It is the moment when the last candle burns out, leaving only the terrifying certainty that the dawn will never come by human hands. But then, the sky tears. The thick clouds are ripped apart by a light outshining the sun, a radiant splendor that defies all laws of physics. This is the arrival of the deliverer, the one awaited through the ages. From the opening in the heavens, a presence descends that redefines the nature of power. As described in Zechariah, his feet touch the Mount of Olives, and the earth responds with violent acknowledgement. The ground splits, creating a valley of escape, and the darkness is incinerated by a glory so intense that the optics of the unified global armies are instantly blinded. The very atmosphere vibrates with the sound of 1,000 trumpets. This is not a man-made rescue. It is a divine, cosmic correction. The unified global armies are frozen in absolute terror. The judgment of the nations begins with a supernatural undoing. The sophisticated weaponry of the North and South becomes useless scrap metal in the presence of the deliverer. Global leaders see their grand designs dissolve. Confusion strikes the ranks. The pride of man is laid low in the dust of the valley of decision. The betrayal is met with an undeniable verdict. They realize too late they have been fighting against the dawn. The force that drew them there like a hook in the jaw now holds them accountable. The world's strength is reduced to a memory, swept away by a power that does not ever negotiate peace. As smoke clears, a profound stillness settles. The transformation of the earth begins, a healing radiating from Jerusalem. Scorched earth is touched by grace, and the smell of cordite is replaced by the fragrance of blooming flowers. The sacred geography is no longer a site of contention, but the global capital of peace. Rivers of living water flow, bringing life to the Dead Sea and turning the wilderness into a garden. It is a new creation, a world born out of the ashes of the old. This is the redemption of the land, an Edenic state where the scars of history are erased. Israel, once isolated, now stands as a beacon for a weary world. The moral reflection of this era is turning swords into plowshares. The industry of death is dismantled. Resources used for conflict are repurposed to sustain life. Remaining nations look toward Jerusalem for wisdom rather than war. The cycle of violence is broken. Peace is a foundational reality. Reconciliation is not based on political compromise, but on a profound spiritual unity and shared recognition of higher truth. The world is finally at rest, and the weapons of the past rust as relics of a darker, more violent and distant time. This prophetic journey is a concluding thought. The history of the future has been written, and time turns toward this midnight hour. Are you an observer of history or a participant in a predestined future? The alignment of nations and the supernatural tension are signals that the veil is thinning. The stars above the valley of decision now shine with new clarity. We are witnessing the prelude to a cosmic resolution. The story of the nations reaches its climax, and the light of the deliverer breaks through the shadows of our world.